and welcome to Door County Reads 2022 Festival. My name is Christina Johnson, and I'm the discussion facilitator today, and also the branch manager for the Sister Bay Liberty Grove Branch Library for Door County Library. Today's event is the Reader's Rampant book discussion for Population 485, Meeting Your Neighbors One Siren at a Time by Wisconsin author Michael Perry. We'll also be discussing another of his books, Truck, A Love Story, paired as our two Door County Read selections. And then just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started, just get everybody on board with a couple things. This program may touch on some varying points of view. We thank you for being open to hearing others' opinions and participating in intellectual freedom in a respectful manner. We will be unmuted for the natural flow of discussion today, but we may mute you your mic should there be extra sound in the background when you're not speaking. And you can unmute or mute yourself as needed as well. So as far as the chat function in Zoom, feel free to use that to ask questions if you'd like. We can't promise that all questions will be used during this session, but we thank you for your participation and we'll do our best to catch all of them. For closed captioning, this event does include live transcription. So if the transcription isn't already below in your view, you can click on the CC closed caption symbol. It's in the bottom toolbar, and then click Show Subtitle. You'll not be able, however, to have the chat and closed captioning enabled at the same time. Zoom can't use the two functions at the same time. We do have a hashtag reminder. It's hashtag Door County Reads. If anybody does social media stuff, you're welcome to use that. And we do have Morgan Mann joining us as well. She's helping with technical support, hosting on Facebook Live and our Zoom virtual here. She's our community relations person for Door County Library. And if there's any questions, you can pop them in the chat if you want right now. Otherwise, thank you for everybody who's here already. And I will have some closing reminders and shout outs at the end, but let's get started. So with both talks, or with both books rather, we have, many of you got Truck and Population 485. We had these free gift copies available through the Door County Library Foundation and the Friends of Door County Libraries, and also lots available through the library system. I myself read both of them on audio, and Michael Perry does read them. If anybody didn't get a chance to read them yet, there's those different options. For those who are here, who read Population 485? Or got started at least? Yeah.
It was a while back, yeah.
A while, yes. That's the other thing,
I read
right?
it a long time ago, and now I'm about half or three-quarters way through it again. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good. Revisiting. Ruth? Oh, I think you're on mute, Ruth. There you go.
I beg your pardon. I read Truck because I hadn't read 485. And I didn't go back to 485. I have it now. That's why I left for a minute.
Yeah, good. And Dave and Karen? You guys, yep. Nice. Okay. So he has a lot of other books too that he's written. Just coming across here at Sister Bay, a lot of people have been choosing to do Coop in addition. There, Nancy has Coop too. That's been another popular one, as well as this one, Montane and Barn Roots. That's been another popular one we've seen people picking up. Yeah,
Where are they?
The bookcase.
he has quite a variety of experiences and things that he's done in his life. So even from the top, so his tent show radio, he has a book that pairs even with his radio shows that he does. He's been, he has a band. There's music CDs you can check out from the library that he's with. There's also, he has some kind of like stand-up style things that you can check up. This Claude Monologues. I listened to this on audiobook on CD. It was really interesting. Some of the material is similar to what we were reading already, and some of it's other fresh things too. He does have an author talk that he did in person at Appleton back in 2009. This is a DVD available through the library to check out if you wanted to see that. Of course, he just did his author talk with us, available on Zoom and through Facebook Live. And then we have it housed on our Door County Reads website for watching now. But if anybody was familiar with him too from his PBS specials, these are available for checkout from the library. Where I Come From and How You Doing. I did watch these in preparation back when it was first announced that he'd be our author, before even getting to read the books. I, like many people, have seen him in person give keynotes at conferences and different things in the community. And it was nice to get a refresher reintroduction to him. If you're looking for more of a documentary style, it's the Where I Come From one, about him and interviews with him. Whereas the How You Doing is very much kind of like a curated comedy of some of his specials that he did a couple decades ago. It's very kind of 90s feeling from the old clips, and he's curating it now, which that was really fun. Some little factoids and connections that I personally had, and I don't know if other people connected with this or have followed. Charlie Berens. Is anybody familiar with Charlie Berens? No? Yes, some
Yeah.
people. When I watched this How You Doing, it was so reminiscent, and it felt kind of like, oh my gosh, Michael Perry's kind of like the original Charlie Berens.
Original Charlie Berens, yeah.
Yeah, you feel that way too. So Charlie Berens, he has a lot of social media content, but he's now come out with this book. And
Yeah, I wanted to check that book out.
Yeah, it's available through the library. And he also has it on audiobook on CD where he reads it. And they're both very similar, kind of that self-deprecating, making fun of, just like the local lingo and lifestyle and things that we do here, but also introducing people that aren't from here into some of that too. And they're just very similar. And one of the things that I looked towards in preparation for this talk was if they actually were linked, was he inspired by Michael Perry? Because they are so similar, especially with what Michael Perry was doing in the 90s for PBS. And in the beginning of Charlie's book, he actually does talk about his inspirations and doesn't mention Michael Perry. It was more so he was doing a stand-up, and he was reminded of this kind of humor by some people that were in the audience and some interactions that he had, and just laughter, and just started kind of going off on that after he spent so much time trying to erase that, being somebody in journalism. Anyways, we're here to talk about Michael Perry though. But that's kind of a neat little side note connection with somebody else who's really relevant now and seems very similar. And I'd kind of love to see them collaborate and do something together. That'd be kind of fun. So just wanted to discuss and compare a little bit of both books. Did people have a preference of either book or enjoyed both? Just kind of some takeaways, initial takeaways of either book.
Well, I really liked, well, I haven't read that one recently, but I really liked Truck when we went, because I don't remember reading this one before. So it was kind of interesting about the truck, but I was disappointed because when I heard the author talk, his truck isn't red. He painted it green, the army green color. And I thought, oh no, I wanted it to be red, but it was, it looked okay. I mean, the paint was cheaper. That was why they got the green paint. So that was kind of funny. And then a friend of mine has just read Coop, which is truck starts out with repairing the truck, and the romance, his, what is he, 37 or something, and he finally meets the one, and so they're just getting married. And then in Coop, they're starting their life on their farm with the chickens and the pigs and everything. So that was kind of interesting too. But I really enjoyed watching his talk that they just streamed, his interview that was supposed to be at the auditorium, but was not. So
It was almost,
if you haven't seen it, you should go back and watch it, because he mentioned a lot of stuff about his writing and the books and his life. So recommended.
it was almost better seeing him in his home surrounding, and it gave us that little tour and all how he pastes up and lays on the floor. Oh my God.
I'll
And
have
then-
to watch that. Is that recorded, Christina, you said?
Yeah, it should be Morgan posted up in the chat there, the doorcountyreads.org/calendar.
Okay,
So past event recordings are housed there and also any upcoming event connections. So it should be there. Morgan, is it up already?
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice.
And it is really interesting. He writes some of the stories, prints it out, and then cuts it all up and lays it out in long, huge lines for each chapter so he can read without having a break in the segmenting. So he can visualize it that way. So it was interesting about his process for sure. And he does explain the green, why he chose the green too. A lot of people wanted it to be red.
Well, go ahead.
Excuse me, when he was showing how he writes, and he had it all, like you said, printed out. And then he said, then he can visualize it, and he can take a piece from here and maybe put it over there, or see that it might fit better. And I understand his process, because I like to see everything all in order like that too. I think people think differently, but it was an interesting process.
And he said he doesn't recommend it, actually. Yeah.
I think it would work for me, though. I think I would do it.
because it was time consuming, or why doesn't he recommend it if he uses it, I wonder?
I think space for one reason.
Oh,
I mean, when you
okay.
have a full chapter all just end to end, how long it is,
Yeah.
and then having multiple chapters next to each other in that length, you see in one place it looks like a warehouse. So I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
if you have that much space, sure, go for it. But
Oh, I see. Okay.
You need a lot of tables, I think.
And walls and floors. Yeah, you
Yeah.
used everything.
And does he moved by the time he's moved by the time he goes to truck, or moved before coop?
He moves when he goes to coop. Yeah, at the end,
Okay.
when they're married, then they move, and that's where they have the farm and the chickens, is what I gathered from it. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Because I read all of those so long ago now. I haven't reread all of them. So
yeah. And then what was that, Visiting Tom? I think that was the one after coop. He mentioned 4 that are kind of like his first stories, and then they're all kind of tied together, and then the rest of them are different. But Visiting Tom, I think, was the next one, and I read that one a while back too, but that was a little different. It was more about the farming. Yeah.
Since we're kind of on truck and we're just talking about paint, there was a little something I wanted to share with you guys. I'm going to screen share here real quick. Let's see here, this one. So back in my past life, when I was in grad school for my library master's degree, I also was in the archives track as like a certificate, a minor. And in that experience, I was able to work with the Wisconsin Historical Society. We did practicums there, and one of my classmates actually worked for the McCormick International Harvester collection, and he was actually the reference librarian for this collection. And yeah, this book was really like harking my memory back to that experience. I've been in the room where all that research is being done, and the collection is immense. It's, at Madison in the Wisconsin Historical Society, and it's just tons of resources. This is their actual web page. And we were just talking about paint colors. I remember that being one of the most common reference questions he actually got was people trying to research different specifics, whether it was manuals, them trying to figure out how to fix something or what kind of a part something required, but color swatches, and even this paint committee decisions, it's pretty impressive the level of detail that this collection houses.
Somewhere.
That would be
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. So I'll include the link here, and it's kind of fun, a fun little rabbit hole to dive down.
Great.
And I'm going to see if I can, I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'll paste the link in.
Okay.
There you go. So if anybody wanted to check that out, you certainly can. Also with truck, so for people who haven't read it, he recounts a number of things. Some of the things that I really connected with were about the recipe books, and he was piling and counting how many recipes he might have to try and accomplish yet. And the more recipe books he gets, then he kind of tabulates how many more recipes he might want to try. And he has a seed catalog that he's going through, because in the book he's also working on gardening. You know, and and he's going through different memories of like NPR radio and just the voices and how those voices evoke certain memories from long ago. I know for myself, when I was a kid, every morning WDOR was on and Paul Harvey was on all the time. So that was one of the voices that came to my mind when he was thinking of memories. Did any other people have connections to the radio or the recipes exploration that he was going through in truck?
Radio for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything in particular, Ruth?
Just the voices, and you even now, before you hear the voice and you know what then they tell who they are, and you could write that, you could say that name. They're so integral.
Yeah.
And even for BBC, because that's what I listen to in the middle of the night, and those voices too become very familiar.
Yeah.
When you talk about when I recommended that my husband read this book, I thought he would like it, and he did pick it up. And his early chapters is all about gardening and food, and I said, hang in there, pretty soon it's going to be all about cars, because I could somewhat relate to the gardening. When it got to the cars, it's like whoosh, that I figured he could tap in there, and he is enjoying the book.
Yeah, Nancy.
I thought the gardening part was hilarious because nothing ever turned out, and the squirrels dug up his little seedlings, and he kept going after it though, because he kept starting all those seeds in his under the grow lights and everything, and then he'd transplant them out to his gardens. But well, he did get tomatoes, because I think his mother came over and watered them, and they survived. But I just thought it's so I could relate really well to that those gardening.
Yeah. And I loved when his friend came over and he saw a cord going into the closet.
Oh.
He thought, ooh, maybe we're marijuana. Turns out no.
Oh, just seedlings.
Yeah.
It was cute.
Another cute part too was when he was saying about, I'm going on a date because I went to the library, and he was saying we could put that on a bookmark. American Library Association could, that's how he met a woman. He's brought that up in a couple, beyond just the book, but in a couple of his other live performances. He also talks about hairstyles throughout the truck, right? And the hairstyles we rocked of yore. And that, at some point, either there's a reality of age, or kind of like how your hair is changing, or what markers you got to go to change to or from a certain look, like mullet, colic, balding, on fire, different things that happened to his hair. Does anybody have any funny stories of your own that are like that, for why you've changed a hairstyle for a certain reason, or somebody else that had a funny incident like his?
Mine isn't about hair, but I just read in the Time magazine, and I can't remember in what country, the man is running for an office, and he has promised that if he is elected, he will include hair transplants under the medical umbrella for that country. For men. I just got a kick out of that one.
Might be important.
Yeah.
Oh.
He also talks about other hacks in here, like laundry hacks. And so, for example, like he has all just gray socks for efficiency. So then, any socks he grabs, they're always going to be matching. Or he could go in with any color in, his loads of laundry, for example, and he doesn't buy white of anything.
Oh, yeah.
Does anybody else have any laundry hacks like that you do? Or that it made you think of?
I don't have
Or that
any,
you might
but
change to? No?
it was a pretty good idea for somebody that wanted to keep it simple, You just buy everything the same color and don't have to worry about it, or no color. Yeah.
My dad had a friend years ago that was a lawyer, very high powered lawyer. And he wore the same exact suit every day, the same black suit, same black bow tie, and he bought the same black car forever because he didn't want to have to worry about anything. He wasn't making a statement. He had too many other things to worry about, that he just bought the exact same clothing to wear to court and didn't want to pick out a different car. And it was a riot because he then became known for that.
Oh.
That he never looked, he always looked exactly the same. So kind of funny.
You just know what works well for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
Nancy.
Yeah, I had a friend that was kind of like that too. She only bought things that were red or blue or white, maybe sometimes black. And so they would all mix and match and she wouldn't have to worry. And I thought that was pretty funny, but kind of boring after a while,
Yeah.
I saw Tina just jumped in. We're just talking, hey, we're talking about in the part of Michael Perry's book and Truck, where he has some laundry hacks. For example, he only buys gray socks for efficiency and it can go in any color of load of laundry. He doesn't buy white of anything. We're just sharing different stories of laundry hacks that other people are aware of that they do or they knew of other people that did.
Sure makes life easier that way then.
Yeah. Yep. You always have matching socks. You don't have to
Yeah.
worry about the 1 or 5 that the laundry ate or the dryer.
Yep.
Yep. So he also talked about what you pay isn't half as important as what you get. So it's kind of like the shooting star seen out of nowhere, straight in front of me, going forward with me ahead as I drove along my commute. I experienced that when I was listening to this book, and it's just like what you pay isn't half as important as what you get. And it was just, kind of lines up with past and present and future analogies. And he had a lot of those kinds of just like life reflections. Were there any life reflections that people felt like it just happened right at a moment when you're going through it? I know some of you read this book a while ago, but were any of those life reflections things that have stuck with you or kind of resonated with you when you were reading it? No, that's okay. There's a number of the things, that he says that are just kind of like connecting with what he's talking about and kind of making light of it, and but also reflecting back on life and when he's sharing a lot of the details throughout the story. As far as the 2 writing styles of the books, did you have one that you preferred over the other? Or do you feel that they were very similar or very different? Any feedback on that?
Well, I like the way Truck was constructed. I don't quite, 485, I guess, is a shorter, a little more segments, but I like the storyline. I like the way it went back and forth and you didn't go all the way through, you kind of he filled in. There were a lot of filling in about, where the girl and her family and the romance and then the truck. And I liked the way it was all put together, and it changed up now and then and kept you turning the pages. So,
Yeah, I definitely wanted to keep reading more with Truck. That was an easy one to get through.
This is Dave. I like Truck because it was a continuous story. The Population 485 was more like a whole bunch of short stories, slightly connected together. And while they were all very interesting and it showed a picture of a small town, it wasn't a continuous theme to the way Truck was. Well, Truck was really 3 or 4 stories interwoven together, but I found it a lot more fun.
mm-hmm.
Our 15-year-old grandson at the time recommended Scavengers, and we did read that. I don't know if any of you have read that one, but it's quite different than
the young adult book.
Yeah, but it's a good story, and it's well constructed. He does a good job of it.
But it's totally different. It doesn't have the kind of humor or the rural atmosphere that his other books have.
Is it more serious? What is it about?
It's a teen fiction book.
Science fiction, social science fiction. I don't know. Read it.
It's what they call dystopian. The world has become separated between people who live in the bubble in the urban areas and people who live outside the bubble. And the ones who live outside the bubble have to be scavengers in order to survive.
And it's power play, the bubble are powerful people and the scavengers are not, have no power.
I'll wait for the 11-year-old to get a little older before I give it to him.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Well, we probably wouldn't have picked it off the shelf ourselves, but when our grandson says, you should read this.
Oh, okay.
What are you going to do?
You read it.
Mhm. Mr. Perry mentioned that he's everywhere he goes, people are asking him, when is the sequel coming out? So I don't know how many of you all heard him speak on Saturday, but I thought it was very interesting about how he is asked that question wherever he goes. So I hope he says what did he say? He has some of it done, or he just has to take some time and just finish it. So
I think
Said he had 3 books in progress.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, he said 80% of that one was done, I think, something like that. He said the problem was they didn't really have a deadline for it and he could just put it to the back of his, what to do first thing. So
yeah.
we'll keep an eye out for it. Yeah.
Mhm. In the meantime, we do have scavengers available through the library for if you want to request it. Yep, I've had it go through a couple times here. It is available through the library. So anything else to wrap up on truck specifically before we segue to more specifically just population 485 that people wanted to cover? Okay. Or any personal connections that anybody else wanted to add in yet about truck?
Well, I did like the pictures at the back,
Mhm.
I could kind of relate to the problems with the car because, well, many years ago, I did help a boyfriend rebuild a motor for a car he was working on. I remember sanding out the, wells or something, but I loved it when they took it out the first time and what was it? The turn signal didn't work. There were still some glitches on the car, and I just thought it was very entertaining to read about, and he did a good job telling us the story.
Nice, good. Anything that you want to know more about from the book Truck that you'd like him to follow up or share if you could ask him? If you were able to have been at like the author talk, for example, would you have asked him anything?
Well, I was sad to learn though that the truck is not running anymore. In his talk, he said that there was some issues. I think it was the brakes, and there were a few issues in it. He said it wasn't running, but hopefully he'll get it going again. Yeah.
All right. So with population 485, some of the things that he goes over in there is very much talking about the past and the present, and moving back to his roots, his community, and just personal experiences with that. And then being an EMT, being a volunteer firefighter and all that entails. And it gets to be a much more heavy book, and you can actually feel it. I experienced both of his books through audio while I'm commuting. And even how he reads both of them is very different. When he was reading Truck, it was much more of a performance. And when he's reading Population 485, it was very much more serious, which obviously the content is much more serious too. And you definitely feel that. But he does, go over some things that aren't as serious as death and crashes. He does talk about things just finding your belonging in your community after you've been away and you're coming back. And one of the things that he talked about was the topographic imprint on your soul that the land has. And it's really easy. His quote is, "The land takes you back and all you have to do is show up." and I'm even getting goosebumps. I mean, you just feel instantly connected to the land that you've been raised in and that is so familiar. But as he says, finding your belonging, your place after being gone, your place amongst a cast of people is harder. And with him, his invitation was by being a fireman, and every fire siren that rang or emergency paging, bell in a sense, that would invite him to get to know his neighbors one at a time through different emergencies that were happening in the community. He also talks a lot about the death location markers and the history of places in a community that you see when you're an EMT person. And also even just the evaluation of a scene and going through that, and all the things that you have to check off, and just remembering things like dead heroes cannot save lives. And you have to, go through your training and remember, that officers are your assets, and you kind of have to follow different protocols. And when you're at a fire, you're assessing all sorts of different things, as a volunteer and serving your community. Did anybody have any connections to that where you've known people that have done this in our communities or your communities that are elsewhere, or that you maybe have?
Well, our grandson is he was an EMT person for a while. He was working in a hospital doing counseling, and then he got involved and went for his EMT and rode the emergency. Now he's a trauma nurse. He went back to school and he's a trauma nurse. And he said he really liked doing it. I think it would be really scary, but he thought that was the place to be. So he didn't tell me too many stories. I didn't really want to ask, but it's an adventure, I can imagine. Yeah.
I think we have a certain amount of that happening in Door County, where kids grow up here and they leave and they think it's great to get out of here, and then they come back and they're just like, yeah, I like it here. I want to stay here. I want to come back and raise my kids here. So I think part of that's the land. Part of that's what, I know that's happened to my kids to a certain extent. It's just unique, and we're in a very unique place like that. So I think I could relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
Ruth, did you have something you're going to say? Or you're on mute right now, actually.
That's a good thing. We have, I'm going to say, an adoptive son. It's just a good friend of a deceased friend, and it's their family. But he's has worked for the fire department and an EMT in Minneapolis. And we don't see him often, but it was just fascinating as he would explain some of the stuff they do and how they do it. And just as an aside, when he came to visit us here and he saw our fire department, he was blown away. It's like, you've got a population of this size and you have that size fire department, And of course, Minneapolis is much bigger and they have multiple departments or stations, but all much smaller.
I thought it was interesting that he could disconnect himself from some of the really bad stuff. I've never known how anyone in the medical field can do that, but I was just getting into the chapter where he says, I can see you dead. I can envision what you're going to look like dead. I don't know if you recall that, but it's a little unnerving because he's seen so many people deceased. He somehow has this knack for that, and he doesn't really like it, but he's got it. And it's
to me, it's a survival, a coping. I mean, they wouldn't last. Yeah. They would not stay if they didn't have a way of dealing with it. And even the dark humor that goes, that was something else that a friend talked about, or dark humor that they associate with that, just to deal with the seriousness of it all.
Yeah, I think that's very similar around here because it's a small community, and other than the influx of people in the summer, if they're bad accidents, and they're very likely people we know and they know, and that's what the experience he was relating to, that he knew an awful lot of the people that he was serving as a firefighter and EMT. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand how they can not get so involved with them or pull away from it or disassociate with it. It seems, I think that would be really difficult, you know, to deal
Yeah.
with. Yeah.
He definitely, you know, there were certain sections where he went a little bit lighter over some of that content. And then there were other ones like chapter 8 and chapter 10, where it was very detailed. You're there very much in the moment of what's going on. I personally, in chapter 8, sobbed for 45 minutes because it's so parallel with, I've had 3 cousins that have died in car accidents, and the one of the 17-year-old boy was parallel with my 17-year-old cousin in a police chase, very similar situation. And in chapter 10, where he loses his sister-in-law as well, both of those hit home very hard. And it really kind of like reminds you too of all the different players that are in it, and the different perspectives that you don't always get to see or hear from. And you know, where he, in his position, he's not only able to see the person that he is needing to help save their life, or you know, to tend to, but he's also talking with the police officers that are involved in with these accidents that have shown up before him, or that were maybe part of the unfolding of it. So he's able to let us in on those different sides of the whole story coming together. You know, and he's also there with the person who's struggling for their life or passing, and bringing them to the hospital. So he's also able to share the viewpoint of what's happening at the hospital. And yeah, I don't know if other people have been through a lot of those different situations where you've been at the scene, or you've been that person in the ER that, you know, he talks about, where you're getting that message from the police officer or somebody. And I know there's a number of people here that have gone through this book like me, where it's really brought you back to that moment. And I figured there would be some of these hard moments in reading this book. I don't know if anybody else had some wonderment about where it would take you when you knew the content before reading it, and if there were certain difficult parts for you too.
Without reading the book, but just based on what you're talking about, I was playing tennis up at our Sister Bay courts, and one of the men went into cardiac arrest. And I just have regrets about how we all handled that and the outcome. The man eventually died very soon after. He was in the hospital a couple of days. I have great regrets over being able to handle it in a different way. And again, something I just read in the Time magazine, can't remember where it is, but people can call in and they will send a drone with a defibrillator.
Oh, wow.
You know, the person who's calling in on the victim's, so to speak's behalf, would have to know how to use it, or maybe it comes with a big sheet or something. But it was amazing. You know, faster than obviously assembling the group that would come in person.
Wow.
Which reminded me too that the fire department right now is trying to get those defibrillators in many, many, many places. Does the library have one? I'm curious.
I think some of the branches do. I'm not sure which ones are. Morgan or Tina, if you're listening, do you know which ones do have it?
I don't have a list of them, but I think the majority of them do have defibrillators. That's a hard word to say. But I think the majority of them do. We did talk about this a while ago, just to make sure that each branch did get one. So I think we're working on, there's only like 2 or 3 that don't. We're working on getting those available.
Well, and that it was amazing the way the technology has changed even since he wrote that book. You know, in the last 20 years or 15 years. I mean, the stuff they didn't have on their ambulances is now, even in rural areas, is just commonplace. So I felt kind of like I wish she'd been able to be a fireman, perhaps now, even a volunteer, and there's still more stuff at their fingertips than there was then. I mean,
Mhm.
I think there is. I guess I can't speak unequivocally about the whole state, but I know our fire department has gotten a lot more equipment.
Good to know.
He does talk in one part too, when he's talking about these emergency calls that come in, where sometimes he wishes they wouldn't have been called, because their job is to save until you can no longer save somebody. And he said, you know, in some cases, the person, no matter what you do, you know, is going to die. But as he was saying with the one elderly, I believe it was woman that he was trying to save, they had to basically crack her ribs like it sounded like soggy firecrackers, even though they knew that she wasn't going to survive. They still had to do that. And it's like he said, you're constantly at war with death, and some you just aren't going to win, and some should just be allowed to be at peace. But if they get that call, they still have to do those life-saving measures. So where he was really wrestling with that. But you know, he does go into some of the really good sides of being a firefighter and the gatherings, like the food sharing. And I felt like anytime he was talking about that, it was so Wisconsin feeling. Did anybody feel that way too and connect with the food he was talking about and that feeling of togetherness and gathering in those situations that he talked about in detail?
The smelt fry.
Mhm.
That is a really Wisconsin thing.
Well, it came through, excuse me if I can go back to truck and how they handled their wedding.
Yeah.
You know, it was just potluck, and then I think the wedding maybe wasn't. I think they catered that somewhat, but I think people still brought stuff. Which then leads me to their honeymoon in the back of the truck in the rain. Oh my gosh. So I'm sorry to go back, but that's.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. The
I
food,
thought one of the funniest scenes in Population was when, I don't know if he's with the one-eyed beagle or what he's doing, but the guy has a bad crash and the whole town is watching, and half the people in the car got out and they're running around and they can't tell who's a victim and who's not. And then the guys who had the crash says, "Don't wreck my car. They're using the jaws of life or something on it." And
no,
and he just says, "Your car's already wrecked. You know, what are you, you know," it just sounded like a circus. And he said that what, you know, anything that was close to town was what people did for entertainment. They went and saw the wreck at the corner at the guy that drove into the laundromat or whatever it was. Yeah. I thought that was hilarious because I don't think it's, you know, it's not great to be an EMT in that situation because it's the whole scene is out of control, or a fireman. But I could see that happening in small town life. Totally. Yeah. I'm going to sign off early, guys.
Okay.
And
Sounds
I
good.
have to return a call also. I'm so sorry, but thank you very much, all of
Oh,
you.
sure.
Good
I'll
seeing
connect with
everybody.
you two later. Thank you.
Thanks. Yep.
I,
All right. I
Hi,
knew I
Beth.
was getting in at
Oh,
the
it's okay.
tail end.
Oh, we're not quite done yet. I think those two just had to leave real quick. We can still keep talking if you want a little bit, Beth. And I see
Okay.
Vivian just jumped in too a little bit ago.
Yeah, I
so
was somewhere else.
that's okay. We have a couple minutes left yet. Just to kind of wrap up some of our discussion here. I was listening to another book club and they were talking about the difficulty in writing memoirs. Does anybody that's in here read a lot of memoirs, and do you kind of connect with that and the level of kind of balancing the minute details where it's of importance to the writer very much, but to readers, are you getting bogged down when you get the minute details in a memoir? Or do you enjoy those minute details to really get the feeling of that person's life and what they're experiencing at that time?
I think it
Well,
depends on what the memoir is about, who it's about.
Right.
For instance, with Michael Perry, he's so unassuming and so down to earth, and people that are like all the people he is talking about in the book, and he doesn't judge them. He's, I thought it was very easy to read in that way. And even some of the little details, when you're reading it, you go, why is he talking about this? But he wraps everything up that he has said in each chapter. So it's this little compartment of information and then you go, oh, now I know what he means and why he went into such detail talking about this or that. So it's just the way he writes, I think, is very unassuming and very approachable.
Mm-hmm. We were talking earlier about kind of going along with that with Michael Perry's PBS DVDs, these two, in particular, the How You Doing. When I was watching this one, and Beth and Vivian and Shelby, I think you weren't in here for that part too, so I'll just mention it quick. This one reminded me, it's very much curated clips of his 90s kind of like comedy sketches that he was doing for PBS, and it's those minute details that make things funny and relatable about living here. And it's so on point with the comedian Charlie Berens, who's really popular right now. And they seem so similar. And like Michael Perry was like the original, and Charlie Berens is, kind of like this social media version now, and how it'd be neat if they could collaborate on something together. They're totally independently grown, but very similar lines, and laughing and sharing the things that make us uniquely Midwest, and those minute details that they both like to share, and sharing about their lives and just lives of living here. Some people were
as far as memoirs go, I think it sort of depends on how interested you are in their life, in their subject. I like Michael Perry's, but I have read some, like there was one just recently I really couldn't relate to that much, about how she is just so involved with creatures, with animals. And so I think memoirs sort of depend on the subject and the people.
Yeah, I like it in Michael Perry's when he was talking about in Truck, where he's talking about the vegetable garden. And I don't know, somebody had either given him some vegetables, but he took a little skinny carrot and another little scrawny thing and packed them in a box and sent them off to this other person.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was just very interesting. I'm glad he put, because I could relate very well to the little skinny carrots and the things that didn't grow well.
Yeah.
I like your hair, Nancy.
Oh, thanks.
Oh.
Not have hair, it's fun to have it
longer.
Yeah.
Talking about like the memoirs and small town life in the upper Midwest, some people have compared it also to Lake Wobegon in similarity, but that one has kind of a bit of a bigger umbrella and a threading arch. However, that there's a lot of like laughter that's incorporated into books like Truck, for example, and small town life connections with Population 485. Is there anything that anybody else would like to wrap up or synthesize or connect to on either of these books before we kind of close out?
It was good choices. It was good to read them all and hear Michael Perry. It was very interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so before we fully close down here, just a reminder of our next book club on March 8th. It's The Four Winds by Kristin Hanna, and it's available in many copies through the library. I have regular print, large print, audiobook on CD, and playaways. They're all available that we can set aside for you. We can put on hold. Just let us know. Give us a call at the branch here at Sister Bay, the 920-854-2721. and we can place them on hold for you or step on in. And be sure to join us for other upcoming Door County Reads events, including the following highlights that we have here. There's going to be a Wisconsin Rights panel tomorrow at 7 p.m. with Kagan Haringa from Crossroads at Big Creek on Zoom. She'll be presenting Won't You Be My Neighbor? That's February 9th, tomorrow. And Supporting Wisconsin Writers panel on February 10th. There's also a play reading of Population 485 by Rogue Theater on February 11th. A panel discussion, Things Like Hope and Faith and the Griffin String Quartet program on February 12th. And finally, a last book discussion on February 14th, Valentine's Day. So for details on these and more, you can go to the doorcountyreads.org calendar link that we posted up earlier in the chat here. And the codes to access all the events, as well as recordings of past events like Michael Perry's author talk, are housed there. And you can leave us some feedback by filling out the online evaluation form available there. We do have some print copies here at the library branch if you'd like to fill any of those out and turn them in person too. And thank you for joining us today. Have a great rest of the week. Final little note about our book club in particular. We do have this bookmark that's listing everything from March through November of all of our reads. So if anybody would like a copy of that, in addition to the email that went out, you're welcome to come and pick one of these up. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Nancy, you said that it was a good choice, and I thought so too for the Door County Read. But when we did the Bailey's Harbor one, Tracy said, and we all liked the book, had a good discussion, but she said some of the groups weren't so enthusiastic about it.
What was their objection to it, or why?
I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, well, that's too bad.
Some had
Michael Perry-
recently read his books already. A couple of the book discussion groups have read one or two of his books over the last couple of years. So they had already talked with him at a meeting, and I think that might have been it. But
Yeah.
but this gave us the opportunity to do a whole bunch of different things that are themes around the books. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
that's what we were hoping to bring. So
Yeah, I had no idea there was a play. There was actually a play. So I'm looking forward to hearing that reading on Friday. I think that will be interesting. Yeah. So,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. See you
Have a
next
good
time.
week.
Bye.
Yes.
bye, everybody.